Now, into the ticket office of Disneyland.
Oh boy, let's do this.
Don't think the CIA is going to be trying to hack your second-gen iPod.
I didn't think so. There might have been a lot of illegal music on there. I wouldn't doubt it. But, I mean...
You were supposed to bring death to the flagships, not join them.
Google has found a new way to piss me off.
iTunes is a constant source of embarrassment.
Behind-the-scenes camera crap.
Here, tell us about courage, Phil. Tell us about courage.
I am Nadella. I can't do it anymore without laughing. I was going to do the whole thing. Welcome, everyone, to the Calling All Platforms podcast. I am your host, Wes, and I'm here with Landon.
Yo, yo, yo.
And Caleb.
You know, an apple a day doesn't necessarily keep doctors away. I've been trying, but it hasn't worked.
Maybe I just need to eat more apples.
See, the problem there, Caleb, is you need an Apple Watch to keep track of health features for you. That's how you keep the doctor away.
I think that would just make me turn me into a hypochondriac, and I would be at the doctor's way more often.
That's also a possibility.
Yeah.
Doc, it says that my heart is doing weird stuff. It's all like, my guy, it's just beating. Like, your heart rate changes when you change your activity level. That's normal.
Did you take the watch into the shower? Yes. Well, there's your problem.
To be fair, it should be fine in a shower. Like, the Apple Watch can stand being submerged.
Can it? Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
I wear my watch
The
swimming.
Apple Watch Ultra is a certified diving computer,
True.
in point of fact.
There you go.
Which is freaking weird still to me, but whatever.
Okay. Well, as you can tell, listener, this is going to be our WWDC episode.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good because I'm not feeling very well, and I probably won't have a lot to say. I'm a little loopy. Had a lot of medicine from the doctor, and this will be fun. I'll try and insert what I can as much as I can between these two yoo-hoos and go from
Good
there.
luck.
And if they're, I'll try. We'll try that. But hey there, Caleb. Do you want to just take the reins, buddy? Because
I got
nothing.
it. I got this horse. Taking this horse by the reins.
Whatever you want to call it.
Threaded with bloodstains. Wow, that turned into a Hamilton quote. All right. WWDC, Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference 2023. Now, before we get into this, listener, I want to talk about something that is not a thing that Apple does or creates, to be clear, but is a thing that exists for pretty much anywhere you find fans of anything, right? And that is the reality distortion field. Okay? So, the reality distortion field doesn't matter so much when you're talking about, like, a sports team, where somebody is in denial about a sports team that actually sucks being really good, you know? And it's just bad luck that they keep losing all of these games. That sort of thing tends to be just harmless fun, whatever. The reality distortion field can cause a problem when you're talking about a consumer electronics company because it influences people to make stupid purchasing decisions. And we'll talk about some possible stupid purchasing decisions that you could make associated with Apple here in the near future. But I just want it to be clear that it's the fans of Apple that generate this reality distortion field, wherein if you're inside of this field, Apple are like this sainted, holy group that can do no wrong, and everything they make is the best version of whatever it is absolutely possible. That's not reality. That is not true. It's not a thing. I will say, Apple knows that this reality distortion field exists, and they play with it and use it to their advantage quite frequently.
Yeah.
So I just want it to be clear. We're going to talk about some things that Apple says throughout, the podcast today. And if I say something that sounds to you like it's insane, like genuinely a crazy person must have said that, I want it to be clear. It's probably Apple's marketing department that originally said it. I am just repeating what they said. I will try to call those out as they happen, but if I miss one, just so you know, it's not me. Please don't judge me. I do not live inside of the Apple distortion field. I have in the past at various points, and I was an idiot. Let's be clear. So WWDC 2023. Landon's laughing because he knew me when I lived in the Apple's reality distortion field.
I think I brought you into that.
You were definitely involved.
I helped with it, at least. That's fair.
Yeah, because, I mean, mostly just because it was honestly, as ridiculous as this sounds, the fact that you bought a computer I wanted, which was a good computer, and got a free iPod. Like, it was that moment I was like, oh man, they give you free iPods when you buy their computers? And that was as far as my brain went before I basically fell down at the altar of Apple. Not necessarily processing that the computers that they were selling are, holy crap, they're expensive.
Yeah.
And they make so much profit off of their devices, they can eat giving you the cost of an iPod and still make a ridiculous profit off of that sale. So anyways, I'm going to start not where Apple started, because this is a developer conference. I'm going to start with their software. It makes sense to me. Apple disagreed. They started by talking about other stuff, but I'm going to start with, I feel like this is the stuff that most people who are Apple customers are going to care about the most. The changes, the updates that are being made to iOS 17 and iPadOS 17. So we're going to start there. The first thing actually relates to the video that I recorded for the podcast that I missed because I was under the weather. And the statement that I made that they had introduced an accessibility feature called, I did not write down the name and I can't remember it now, but it's an accessibility feature that allows you to kind of customize the interactive bits of the display of your phone that I was saying might be a legitimate option for trying to mimic CarPlay on the screen of your phone when it's docked to the dashboard in your car, for a car that does not have CarPlay enabled. Now, I think it's worth noting that I stand by that. However, standby view is a thing that Apple is adding to iOS 17 that may also enable you to do that, and probably in a little bit more better way. So
better way.
Yeah.
You?
Look, I have a lot to cover. Words are not gonna. I'm not gonna care. Okay, just words. So standby view is basically just a way that Apple lets you, or is going to let you customize the display of your phone when it is charging, right? So you plug the thing into a charger, you stick it onto a MagSafe charger, whatever, and it's going to change like the lock screen of your phone to do something specific. The first one that they showed was for their MagSafe charging stand that you can put on your bedside table or something like that. You stick it on that sucker sideways and it can display the time like a big old alarm clock screen. They're also going to give you the ability to put widgets and stuff on there so that you can show those. It's obviously pretty customizable, just additional lock screen functionality. And it's not going to always be visible unless you've got one of the Pro iPhones that have the always on display. But it looks interesting, and they didn't go into a ton of detail about what exactly you can do with it. So, you know, I give it a little bit of time. I may download one of the public betas and mess around with it to see if this is going to be able to put like your music on one side and your maps on the other side and give you a live update of what your maps are doing and let you change your musics from right there on the thing. It's going to enable some like home hub like control functionality as well. So like the widgets that are showing on the standby view are going to be interactive because you'll be able to like turn on and off lights via HomeKit. So, you know, there's little bits and pieces of it that are kind of making me think maybe I can get CarPlay out of my phone with this, but remains to be seen.
What this reminded me of is, I mean, it's, so before I go into this, it's something that happens with both Google and Android. Obviously, they copy each other, and it happens. And generally, when one company copies the other company, they do it slightly better in most cases. More often than not, they don't copy and make it worse. Because, it does happen, but it's not very often. So like with this one, Google has had this feature, like on a Pixel phone, if you have a Pixel dock that you shouldn't buy because it's overpriced, but if you happen to have one, it can basically do this same thing with your Pixel phone. It's something that I never used because even like with the phone dimmed all the way down at night, it still puts out light, and it was annoying to me. So I never used it. And the features that it did weren't beneficial to me. This one, to me, is a little more useful because you can customize it a little more so than what you could on Android. But it's still not going to be something that I use. I mean, and what I actually thought of it when they were showing all the different ways of doing it and some pictures of it, I was like, oh, it's a bigger Apple Watch face on the phone.
Sort of.
It's kind of what it looks like. And it looks really good. But like I can do this with my watch. Like I can have it set on the charger and it will show a specific watch face at the right angle and whatnot. But I turn that off too. Because personally, I like my room to be darker, and
yes,
at least when I'm sleeping at night.
Yeah, they did say that Standby View would use your like dark mode settings and stuff on your phone to like dim into a night mode and like do only red light on the screen and stuff like that for when it's dark. But yeah, you know, if you've got an OLED phone screen, then that might be okay. Like, I don't know, if you're used to having those red LED alarm clocks in your room and you're okay with that, then it might be fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine for that.
Yeah, but you know, if you have an LCD screen, it's probably still going to be kind of bright because they can't actually turn off all the pixels. So, but yeah, it's an interesting feature. It's one of the more interesting for me personally features that they announced for iOS 17, just because, like I said, I'm genuinely interested to see if I can turn this into CarPlay.
Yeah.
Like I just need maps and I need music just next to each other on the screen. That's it.
I also really like if you get certain chargers that have the MagSafe stuff built in, then it'll know which charger that you've got it plugged into, and you can customize what shows on the screen per each device that you have it charged with it charged on. So like if you do have one in your car, it can show a specific thing on there. Or if you have it next to your bed, it can show a specific thing there, or in your kitchen, or what, you know, you can have it customized for where you are and what you're doing at that time, which is really cool.
Yep. They implemented it pretty smartly. All right. Another thing that they're adding to iOS 17 is a journal app.
I do like this. I think it's kind of cool.
It's a journal app. Like, I don't really know what else to say about it.
Yeah.
I've used the Day One journal app in the past, and the features they were talking about were very similar, right? Like you can add photos and it will take the metadata from the photos to generate an entry you can add text to and stuff, or you can just add text for like now at a certain time, and it just and you can associate it with like specific events in photos, or specific like just contacts and stuff like that. Like it brings together Apple's ecosystem of apps that have all of your data already to allow you to easily generate pretty rich entries that include like people that were involved, images of it, video, and stuff like that. And so, you know, it's a nice implementation of a journal app. So.
Yeah, I think so. Like, it was funny because I was watching the keynote and I was talking with some people in a Slack channel that I'm in, and I was like, "Oh, the Day One folks are going to be pissed about this."
Yeah.
But then I got thinking about it, and like, this has happened in the past where Apple will take a really popular app and put it into iOS, and I think this is the same case here, is generally it doesn't have as many features as the standalone app will have. Like, you could probably do more stuff in Day One than you can here, but the benefit that Apple has is because they build the software and everything, they can tie in to more things with other software, whereas Day One can't. Like, you can add photos into Day One, but this one will suggest photos like, hey, this was has to do with what you just wrote here. Do you want to put these photos in here? Or you can do like add different things with it, or put music to it with Apple Music. Like, they can do more things that way than what Day One can. So there's pros and cons to both, but it is nice that it is built into the software now.
And I will say, you know, they're not offering you the ability to like print journals and stuff like that the way that Day One allows you to do, and stuff like that. So, you know, it's not, if you're already in the habit of using a journaling app, I would say don't plan on replacing it with this. Like, you've already got a solution, just use it. If you're not and you want to get into it, give this a try, I guess. I don't know. Okay, another feature they added that somebody else has already had for ages is NameDrop. And no, that doesn't mean that you can get your name onto a mixtape or something like that.
Man,
That's
That would be
basically just
awesome.
allowing it's just name drop and then it shows up in a random track on Apple Music. Airdropping contact cards, which is the thing that Samsung phones have been able to do to each other for ages. I know that much. Possibly other brands as well. But yeah, that's what it is.
I do
Airdropping
like
contacts.
the customizable. What do they call posters? What I don't know what they.
The
is that-
custom contact poster.
Yeah,
That was the
those
next
were
thing on
kinda
my
cool.
list. I think those are cool. My problem with that is that you create the card for yourself that other people are going to see when you call them or when they go in to look at your contact on their phone or when you FaceTime messages and stuff like that. And I kind of hate that because I have custom photos already chosen for some people, and I can pretty much guarantee that nobody is going to select a picture of a funny bear on the cover of a textbook that I have for them as their custom contact poster. So this is going to wipe out all of my hard work making memes and jokes for the contacts on my phone, and I hope I can turn it off. That's
Well, I think that this will be an option because right now you can already have your own, like you can put a picture in for somebody, or if they are on iOS, you can choose what they have, like their memoji basically,
Yeah.
or whatever
Yeah.
picture they have
for the
involved.
shared contact stuff. Yeah.
So I would imagine that you could probably still set your own person, like whatever you want it to be, or this.
that's
I'm
that's
hoping.
my hope.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, they did some contact stuff. Another thing affecting like phone calls and stuff like that, they have added Google already had this. They have added live voicemail. So that if you have a call that comes onto your phone, you can send it through to voicemail and then it will transcribe the voicemail in real time. So that you can read whatever is being said. As I understand it, they did make it so that you can actually pick up the call still at that point
Yeah.
and respond to those people. So that's pretty good implementation of it. No complaints there. I guess it's just a matter of whether or not their transcription service is good.
How good that is.
Which-
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they transcribe voicemails after the fact now, and it's generally been okay. There are some accents it really struggles with, but I can't imagine it being worse than that. So
Yeah. Like the difference between like the one that Google has is called Call Screen, and it actually
Right.
answers, like you can click answer the phone and the Google Assistant will talk to the person and then get information that way. Whereas I
Right.
actually kind of like this implementation a little better because if they're going to leave a message, they're going to leave a message. Whereas
Right.
if they think they're talking, like the phone gets answered and then it's a robot, most people just hang up automatically.
that's true.
So I actually like this implementation a little bit better. But either way, I'm glad that it's here because I used that all the time on Android. I love the call
Yeah.
screen feature. It's fantastic.
Yep.
Especially with spam calls. Great.
Yes. Yep. So that's coming. In a similar vein, they're finally adding like basically voicemail for FaceTime now.
Yeah.
So if you call somebody via FaceTime and they don't pick up, you can now just leave them a message about what you were calling about and stuff like that. I can't count the number of times I have gotten a FaceTime, I missed it, and I called them back or sent them a text or something. They're like, "Oh, sorry, I butt dialed," and I'm like, just can't count the number of times. So now it's like if I get a message, I'll be like, "Oh," and I look at it, and it's just like the inside of somebody's pocket. I'll be like, so clearly that was not intentional, and move on with my day. So that's nice.
Mhm.
They've also made a few updates to the Messages app for iOS 17. Like if you have a conversation with with a group of people and there's a bunch of stuff being said, they're now kind of catching up to other group messaging platforms and giving you a catch-up arrow that will jump you back to the beginning of the messages that you have missed. So you can jump up in the conversation and read down to catch up. They've made it easier to do inline replies to people as well, which helps those group messages. They've also freaking finally given you audio message transcription. So if somebody sends you an audio message, it will transcribe the message right below it there into text, which like I remember when they added audio messaging to messages and I was like, but why? Like, if I want to call somebody, I'll just call somebody and leave them a message. If I want to text somebody, I want text. Like,
Yep.
It's funny. I heard someone, so I was listening to, I think it was Mac Break Weekly on the Twit network, and they had Micah Sargent on, who's a big iOS person, and he was like, he mentioned, he's like, I love sending voice messages. I hate receiving them. So he's like, this is going to be amazing because I hate listening to them, but I love to send them. So, like, that's actually a very fair point, because I would hate to have to listen to them all the time too. But I've never sent one, but I'm not opposed to it because I like the idea of it. But I would hate to get them.
Is a pain.
Yeah,
it's
especially if you're in a place that you can't listen to them, like if you don't have headphones, or like if you're just anywhere where it's quiet and you can't just play something. Yeah, having it transcribed is going to be really nice.
Yep. So yeah, that's going to be coming. Super, super enthused about that. Less enthusiastic, like for me personally, but something that I can see being really useful is check-in, which is basically giving you the ability to, Apple is basically just giving you software tools that you can share with your friends when you're going on a date and you're sketched out by who you're going with. This is like essentially just gives them the option to nanny you and watch you carefully, as opposed to just like, oh, hey, like because, good dating advice for especially women in this day and age is tell somebody that you're going on a date, tell them who you're going with, tell them where you're going, when you plan to be back, and then give them like if I text you this or something like that, then it means SOS, come and get me or something like that. And if you can, share your phone's location with them. And check-in basically automates all of that stuff.
Yeah.
You can select a contact that you're automatically sharing your information with and tell them a specific time that you are going to check in by. And if you haven't checked in by then this person is going to get notifications that include your location or your last known location and all of this other information, so that they can try and find you, or they can report you as missing to the police or something like that. It's basically just a safety net for sketchy situations. And yes, like obviously not just dating, but yeah, there's quite a number of use cases for this sort of thing. So that's another feature they added. They sort of wrapped it under the Messages app because a lot of those things like are going to be handled via Messages, just notifications and texting and location sharing and stuff like that. So that was iOS 17. A lot of those same things, obviously dealing with Messages and FaceTime and stuff, are going to be in iPadOS 17 as well. But iPadOS 17 does get a few special features all of their own, such as custom lock screens. Hey,
Yay.
We got them on the phone last year. We get them on the iPad this year.
Yay.
So that's nice. I'm actually a little concerned. I need to go double check again. My iPad may not actually be supported by iPadOS 17, which is kind of a bummer, but also it is like 7 years old at this point. When did I get that thing? 6 or 7 years old. It's old. So like I kind of get it. But yes, custom lock screen and interactive widgets.
Which is my favorite part. And from what I understand, it is also coming to iOS.
Yes, they covered it under iPadOS. I think because due to size constraints,
right?
There's going to be more interactivity on the iPad widgets than there are on the iOS, like the iPhone widgets. But so being able to like play your music or pause your music right from the music widget instead of having to tap on the widget, go into the app and then do it. That's nice. Stuff like that.
That was the biggest thing for me when they first announced widgets on iOS, was the lack of that. I was like, that's the only thing that these need. And then they will be, one, on par with Android, and two, actually really nice. I mean, I like just regular widgets. It does give a little more information. But the fact that you can now, like if you have a to-do list widget, you can now check things off of it. You don't have to go into the app and then check it off and then exit the app. You can just do it right there on the home screen. And same like Caleb mentioned, music, podcasts, things like that. It's so nice. So I am very much looking forward to that.
Yep. And like interactivity in widgets has kind of been a thing in the quote unquote today view on iOS and macOS in the past. But those widgets were like a different class than the home screen widgets were and the lock screen widgets. So bringing interactivity to those lock screen and home screen widgets is a big deal. And I appreciate that. I think probably the best moment of the entire event for me personally was right at the end of the iPadOS bit where Craig Federighi just hands down the best presenter at Apple since Steve Jobs left and died. I guess he died. Anyways, if you're not aware at this point, sorry, listener, just spoil that one for you. But Craig Federighi is the best. Love his events. Love WWDC just because Craig gets so much stage time. They finally introduced the ability to set multiple simultaneous timers on iPad and by extension iOS as well. But he mentioned it as all like, and also multiple timers, and they show it on the home screen, and then it like the camera pans from that to his like a close-up of, not like a close-up, but like focuses in on Craig. The music cut out at that moment, and he just said, "We truly live in an age of wonders," with a complete straight face, and then moved on with the event. And I'm all like, I love that Apple recognizes it's bizarre that this hasn't been a thing you could do with their stock timers app up to this point. Like, I'm glad they added it, but I appreciate more that they're aware how dumb it was that it wasn't there already.
What I'm very much looking forward to, if it ever happens, is if they ever add the calculator app to iPad, what he says to that, because it's going to be just as good, if not better.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And that will receive a massive cheer from the crowd.
Probably will. So many people have been asking that for since the thing was released. I think that people have been like, what? Why can't I have like a scientific calculator on my iPad with a gigantic screen? Think of how many buttons you could fit on there, guys. Like, what the heck? It's a calculator. It's not like this is difficult to make. Yeah. Anyways,
I will say my favorite Craig Federighi part didn't have to, he was part of it, but it wasn't him presenting. They talked about new sticker features. They can do live stickers in messages, which is kind of cool. It's something I've never used, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I do like you can, they did this last year where you could take or like press on a subject of a photo, take that person out and basically turn it into a sticker. You can now do that with like video or live photos, and it'll take the live photo and make that into the sticker, which is really cool. But they did one of him with a basketball in front of his face wearing like a Swift like jumpsuit, like a Swift coding language jump. It was amazing. And I want that sticker now.
So it was pretty good. Honestly, somebody will probably extract it from the video. Like, they just need to extract that video clip in a high enough resolution that they can then grab that live photo out, and it can be done. It could be done. Anyways, another thing that I feel like was kind of a big deal is the ability to share AirTags. Yeah. So AirTags have, since their release, been kind of a privacy concern. And over the years, Apple has made quite a few changes to the way that they're handled, so that essentially, if you have an AirTag that is not yours, is not affiliated with your specific Apple ID on or near your person for any, like, even kind of extended period of time, meaning like more than about 5 or 10 minutes, your phone's going to start going crazy. It's like, you've got an unaccompanied like AirTag nearby, whatever. And partially that's to like let you know, somebody may have like left something at your house, or, something like that you can help them find. But it could also be somebody trying to stalk you, right? So it's a safety feature, and I think that it's good that it's there. However, if you have family members that have AirTags like on their backpack or something like that, and they get in the backseat of your car to go drive someplace with their backpack, then your phone's going to start buzzing and going crazy, and that's just obnoxious. And so they're basically allowing you to have shared AirTags so that you can be in the same proximity as these AirTags, and A, you're able to find them, and B, they're not going to set off like protection algorithms inside of your phone. So that's nice. They're finally working all the kinks out of the implementation of AirTags.
Yeah.
Okay. That's iOS. Anything else you'd like to say about iOS, iPadOS, Landon?
No.
Okay.
And just
Sweet.
because no for me too.
Yes, Wes,
Just
I
figured.
should have asked.
figured.
By the way, listener, Wes is still here.
I am.
Yes.
I am.
Speak
Now,
up.
now he knows how I feel during the gaming segment of the podcast.
That's true, which is next week. So that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, moving on to macOS then. So this year, macOS Sonoma is what we're going to be getting. Thanks to Apple's crack marketing team that got in their van and went and got, what was it? Was it drunk this year or high? I can't remember. Anyways.
I think it was. They were talking about wine because Sonoma is one of the wine areas of California.
Yeah, I think it was drunk.
So they were
Anyways.
probably drunk this time.
There was simultaneously not much for macOS Sonoma and also kind of a lot, like in terms of new stuff that they have added. Obviously, a bunch of the stuff that we talked about in iOS for messages, FaceTime, calling, stuff like that. All those features are carrying over to macOS Sonoma as well, right? Like Apple does a pretty good job of keeping these cross-platform things unified in their functionality. So that includes stuff like all the sticker changes made to messages and all of the improvements to the group chat functionality and FaceTime call messages and stuff like that. They also have added desktop widgets to Sonoma.
We're going back to, I made sure to go find this, Mac OS X 10.5 Leopard.
Heck yes.
That was the first version of Mac OS that I used. That was when I bought a laptop in 2006, and this came out in 2007. That software had desktop widgets, and they were useless. I think the ones now are going to be slightly more useful. But is anybody actually going to use? I mean, I never used them before. Not. I remember back then they actually had a separate like page on the desktop. Like you could go to a different, it wasn't a different desktop, but it was kind of a different desktop that just had widgets.
Well, so with Leopard, they introduced multi-desktop, or was that Snow Leopard? I think it was Leopard. They introduced multi-desktop functionality.
Yeah.
And it was, in that case, a separate desktop. They actually introduced the widgets with Tiger 10.4. And they lived in a separate screen overlay that they called the dashboard. Yes. Right? And technically the dashboard continued to exist up until like just 3 or 4 years ago. Like they didn't get rid of the dashboard that long ago, and you could still put those widgets on there. Like they were totally still a thing up until Yosemite, at least. Like they may have cut them out with Yosemite. But anyways, so yes, desktop widgets on macOS have been a thing in the past. And like Landon said, they were kind of useless. And Apple tried to bring them back in the Today view, with iOS widgets. And they're still useless there. I don't imagine that being able to put them actually on my desktop is going to change the usefulness of them because I don't know about you, listener, but my desktop is generally covered like with windows that I'm doing stuff in. I don't know. Okay, whatever.
I did hear somebody talking about this. I can't remember where I heard this, but they brought up how widgets used to be a thing. And they're like, you could basically do the same thing that they did back then and just have a separate desktop of just widgets. So your main one is there, and then if you want to use one, you could go there. And yes, you could do that. But
and then the dashboard is back. Yes. Oh my gosh. Why?
And honestly, I always forget that Today view is even there, so I don't even use the widgets that are there because I just don't think about it.
I don't use them at all. So yeah, that's the thing that they are adding. I feel like it should be mentioned because they're talking a whole bunch about widgets on their other platforms. Yes, platform unification is a thing that Apple does very well, even when it doesn't make any sense and is totally stupid. So yeah, desktop widgets on Sonoma. Yes. Cool. Now, kind of the big news on Sonoma is actually weirdly so bizarre. game mode.
Yeah.
Like, they spent quite a bit of time talking about Metal 3, and they actually brought out Hideo Kojima to talk about Death Stranding and how they were bringing the definitive, like, director's cut edition of Death Stranding to, they were porting it to Metal 3 using the tools that Apple was providing, that they're introducing all of this kind of under this, like, they're introducing game mode along with a quote unquote refreshed emphasis on games on macOS. So game mode on macOS is the same as game mode on Windows. It just prioritizes games in terms of the hardware resources that they have access to. So if you have a game running, then the game is going to, like, take precedence over background tasks in terms of getting CPU and GPU resources. Okay, yeah, fine. That's whatever. But they also are introducing the Metal 3 porting toolkit. Okay? So they're releasing a toolkit that makes it easier for game developers to port their games to Metal so that they'll run natively on Apple Silicon. It's worth noting, game mode is an Apple Silicon exclusive feature. That's not going to work on your Intel Macs, probably because most of the Intel Macs have integrated Intel GPUs, and those are crap, and no amount of game mode shenanigans are going to make that good, so don't even try. Fair enough. But the interesting thing about this actually came out after WWDC was over. You know, like, Hideo Kojima got up, he talked about how they were using the porting toolkit to bring Death Stranding to the Mac, and it was going to be awesome. They were using, I can't remember what it's called, the Metal 3 version of DLSS that does, AI-enabled upsampling so that you can get higher frame rates by rendering the game at a lower resolution and then using AI machine learning on the Apple Silicon processor to upscale it to higher resolution for your monitor. So, they talked about that. After the event, the toolkit was available for developers. Some developers started messing around with it, and a developer discovered that it enabled him to just play Diablo 4, which is not a Mac game. It's not released on Mac. He could just play it on his Mac. Now, the frame rates weren't amazing.
Goldberg?
But what?
You didn't hear about that, did you?
I did hear about that.
No, who told Whoopi Goldberg what?
So Whoopi Goldberg made a big old stink to Blizzard this past week and said she's really mad at them for not putting Diablo 4 on Mac.
On Macs? Oh my gosh,
she
that's
can't
hilarious.
Yeah, I did
Really?
hear about that.
That's so funny.
Tell Whoopi Goldberg, there you go.
She's got to find
man.
something to complain about. I mean, not that she has a lack of things to complain about,
Hey,
but she has to.
We're supposed. That's a platform
That is-
I don't want to talk about. Okay, so let's just move
so
on.
weird that she's. Anyways, okay.
You're welcome.
I think the weirdest part about that is Whoopi Goldberg plays Diablo. That's what I'm hearing here. How bizarre. Okay. So, yeah, and actually the same developer was also able to get Cyberpunk 2077 running. It was like 14 FPS or something like that. Like, it wasn't good, but it was running natively. And neither of those games have a Mac port available for them. So, apparently this porting toolkit also includes a translation layer for translating APIs like Vulkan and DirectX to Metal 3, which enables something very similar to Rosetta or the Proton, Valve's Proton translation layer for running totally not ported games on macOS. So that's a thing that exists now. And ostensibly, this exists as a part of the toolkit for testing purposes. So the developer can take their game, they can test it on the Mac and be like, okay, this is an automatic translation, got us this far. What do we need to optimize now in order to get it ready for release on Mac? But you can bet your boots that I will be trying this thing out to see how good a job it does. Unfortunately, I am going to have to buy an Apple Silicon Mac to do that. So
so sad.
It's such a shame. Yeah, I don't know. Don't know how I'll survive.
You know what this reminds me of? And I do, before I go too far, I do think this will be more effective than with this other port that I am going to talk about. But it reminds me of when Microsoft made a port, basically the exact same thing that could make it so you could take your iOS or Android app and just put it in, and then it would work on Windows Phone. And did anybody do it? No.
No.
No, and again, I do think more people will take advantage of this. Just because Mac is a very popular platform,
Yeah.
but it's just not the platform for gamers. People that are going to game on PC have a gaming PC, whether or not they use
true.
Mac on the side or not, doesn't matter. So
Well,
it's funny.
I think what's wild about this is that probably over the past couple of years, most Mac gamers that were sick and tired of not being able to game on their Macs probably bought a Steam Deck. Like,
Yeah.
I'll bet you most of the Steam Deck buyers were people who have Macs at home that are all like, I want a gaming computer, but I don't want to buy a PC or build a PC. And so they got a Steam Deck because it was cheap and it worked. And so they're actually probably pretty familiar with something like a translation layer, because Proton is what powers a ton of the games that run on Steam Deck, because that's a Linux-based operating system running DirectX games. And Valve has done a great job with Proton. It's built on Wine as the underpinnings, and supposedly this toolkit thing that Apple has got is also based on Wine. So there's a lot of heritage there, and people are going to be familiar with the concept, to say nothing of the fact that half of the software that people are running on their Apple Silicon Macs aren't native Apple Silicon binaries. Like, they're using the Rosetta translation layer, and they just work because Rosetta is stupid good at that kind of thing. So Apple has got some heritage here, and they're building off of stuff that already works very well. So the fact that they were able to get a running version of Cyberpunk 2077 literally the day after this thing launched with no actual developer support or effort, that's pretty dang impressive. So yeah, gaming on the Mac, that might actually be a thing in the near future.
I mean, they put that much time into it.
Yeah, it's wild. I won't complain, because having multiple computers at my desk so that I can play games and, do everything else is kind of a pain in the butt. I would love for my Mac to be able to I'd love to be able to just install Steam and play all of my games on my Mac. That would be amazing. So here's hoping. All right, that's the big news for Sonoma for me. I mean, there were a couple of other little things they talked about, but I didn't, like, oh, Safari is faster now. It's the fastest ever. Yay, fastest web browser in the world. And I'm sitting here like, okay. Like, who is benchmarking their browser? Apple? Like, come on.
Apple is.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right there.
Yeah. Yep. So anyways, that's all I've got for Sonoma. Did you have anything else, Landon?
Well, I was sitting there watching the keynote and watching about this Sonoma stuff and thinking, I'm still on Monterey. Like, I haven't even updated to Ventura yet. So
yeah.
And I do believe that my Mac Mini is compatible with Sonoma, but it's like the last one. Like, they cut off a bunch of computers for Sonoma. And I do believe that mine will still work with it. But I'm actually, like, the past week or two, I've actually been considering, maybe I should finally update to Ventura. And I might do that. And then when Sonoma comes out, I'm not going to do that yet because, again, I have critical software that I need to use that if it doesn't work, I'm screwed. So that's why I haven't updated to Ventura yet. But I mean, I did double check everything the last couple of weeks. I'm like, okay, everything will work with it. Now, the only drawback that I'm on is the settings page that's going to be there. And it is awful.
So bad.
That's the one thing that's keeping me away from Ventura is that settings page. And,
it's the worst. Yep. That's a valid reason to avoid it.
Right.
Straight up.
I was really hoping that they would, in Sonoma, like, they could keep the
that
design language, but go back to the layout of the settings that it used to be. But they didn't mention that, unfortunately.
I mean, to be fair, they didn't actually announce that the settings app was getting a redesign when they redesigned it last time. So they may have fixed it and just not told anyone. But I do feel like now that developer betas are available, the fact that I haven't seen anybody talking about it means that it probably didn't happen.
Yeah, if it had been changed, everyone would be talking about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everyone would be over the moon. Good times. Okay. So, moving on from Sonoma. watchOS 10. That's a operating system I have never used. I will say that they did add one thing that to me made a ton of sense, and that's widgets on the watch face. It's just widgets everywhere this year. So basically, in the past, if you wanted to have like glanceable information available on your wrist with your Apple Watch, you had to have complications on your watch face. But Apple also shipped a whole bunch of very plain watch faces that were just cool looking ways to look at the time. And I never understood those, because a lot of the power of the device is the ability to have glanceable information available when you look at your watch. So you want complications, right? But these watch faces don't have complications. Widgets basically kind of take care of that. They're essentially the sort of information you would have on complications available by just kind of swiping up on the digital crown on a plain watch face or any watch face. So basically, I'd be able to get quick access to the information that I want and still use the the new Snoopy and Woodstock watch face that they're adding to watchOS 10, which is dope.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that.
Like, that is the best watch face. I don't care who you are. So, yeah, like, I thought that was a really cool feature as a person who does not use the Apple Watch. So, you know, that okay, Apple, you got my attention, barely.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that, because, listener, I was telling these guys before we started recording that one of my favorite watch faces that I use on a fairly regular basis is just a giant digital watch face. It just has the time on it. Just because it's nice and clean, it's really easy to look at. Okay, that's the time. But it has it doesn't have an option for a complication anywhere. There are some that have options for one or two complications, but my other favorite watch face is one that has 4 complications, because it has 4 complications. So I'm looking forward to this, being able to just scroll up on the digital crown and, there's all these widgets that give me all that options. And there is they did mention you can have a widget that is just complications. You can have, I think they said up to 3 complications on the one widget.
Yeah, I think so.
So you can have different apps with widgets, and then you can have a complications widget so you can get even more information really quick, which is really nice. And they also mentioned that these is a smart stack, so it can change throughout the day depending on what you have coming up. Like if you have an appointment of some sort coming up, it'll put that near the top. Or if you have a to-do list and something that is, needs to be done, it'll put that near the top, or different things like that. So that is kind of nice. I'm really hoping that you can make it so it's not a smart stack and just a regular stack as well.
Yeah.
Because, I like the smart stack idea, but I also like the idea of being able to put the ones that I want in certain locations.
Yeah.
So I'll have to play with that when it comes out. But I do like this option a lot, though. It is going to be very handy. And like Caleb said, that Snoopy and Woodstock watch face is fantastic.
It's so cool.
And I will be having that on my watch the moment I download this on my watch.
Yep. It's good stuff. Let's see. They also give you the ability now to, it's also in the health app on iOS, so you don't have to have a watch to use this one, but the ability to log moods and emotions, do like a mental health checkup.
Yeah.
So they're now adding mental health tracking to their stuff. And I do think in the context of some of the stuff that they announced later on in the in the thing, I'm all like, Apple, you are probably contributing quite a bit to people's negative, mental social health, especially.
Yeah.
And yet you're giving us the option to track it now. So I'm like, okay, we'll see how this goes. But yeah, so that's the thing. They're always adding more ways to monitor your health via the watch and stuff like that. They really have kind of latched onto the concept of this not necessarily being a fashion thing as much as it is like a health thing. It's more of a health tracker than anything else at this point. So, which is why I don't have one, because I don't care about my health. I guess. I don't know. All right. That's all I had on watchOS. I don't.
There were a couple things that I liked that I wanted to mention. And another thing I mentioned to these guys beforehand is I specifically took notes on the watch part of the keynote because I knew Caleb was not going to cover it as well as I probably would like because he doesn't have a watch and he doesn't care about the watch as much, which is fine. Not everyone needs it. Not everyone wants it. That's fine. There's 2 new features that they're adding or giving more features to is a new cycling. Like they have a cycling workout on the watch, but they're adding new features to that. So you'll now be able to connect your watch to Bluetooth bike sensors. If you have those, like a bike computer that you have on your bike, if it's Bluetooth enabled, you can connect your watch to that and get even more information from your bike. They are also giving the ability that if you have a phone mount on your bike, that cycling workouts will show up as a live activity on your iPhone on the lock screen. But then if you click on that, it goes full screen and gives you a lot of the same metrics that you would get if you were like on a stationary bike. Like it's got different things that like your heart rate and stuff it'll show on that screen. This will do the same thing, but on your phone on a regular bike if you're outside riding. And that I actually am really looking forward to that because I've started to get more, like I used to go bike riding all the time and I got out of it before. I'm starting to get back into it a little bit. So having this stuff, I'm really looking forward to, and I will definitely try all this stuff out when it's available because I think it's really beneficial to have all that information, especially right there on your phone or on your watch. I like it better on the phone because then you don't have to take your hands off the handlebars and, be scrolling around on your watch. That's not, I mean, you can ride with no hands, but it's not the best option. The other thing that they did was they added some features to the hiking workout. And the thing that they talked about first was inside of the Compass app, it will now automatically set a waypoint for the last location that you had cell service. So if you get lost or something like that, or you need to make a phone call or for some reason, it'll tell you, okay, go to this location and you'll be able to make a phone call there. It will also give you a waypoint for the last time you were connected to it or it had ability to connect to any cell network or something like that. And like for the SOS phone calls, like if you don't have the satellite, the newer iPhones that have that feature, it can use any cell network to be able to do certain text messages or calls that way as well. So it'll give you those waypoint options, which is really nice. And they're also adding a topographical map inside of the hiking app, which, okay, that's kind of cool. I personally would rather have that on my phone because it's a bigger screen, it's easier to see, but it's kind of cool that it's on the watch. But those are the features that I really liked with the watchOS 10 that I'm looking forward to, especially the biking stuff. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'm glad they're adding stuff for people that aren't just me.
I'm glad they are too.
Yeah. Nice, Apple. Nice job. All right, so let's move on. tvOS, the redheaded stepchild. tvOS 17 actually did get a new feature that I'm really stoked about. FaceTime. They're adding FaceTime to tvOS. Now, on the surface of it, this sounds kind of dumb. But also, have you ever been on like a call with, I don't know, your family or something because there's a global pandemic and you're all isolating at home and you can't get together anymore. And so you're just on Zoom calls all the time trying to stay connected. It'd be really nice to watch those on your TV, wouldn't it? And you can cast your phone's screen to the TV. That is a thing that has been a thing for a while, but it sucks. Yeah. The experience is awful for those like live calls and stuff like that. So FaceTime, as supported on your TV, it'll be built in so that the call actually just goes through the Apple TV, which will simplify things a lot and make the quality much better. You may be wondering, though, listener, how the crap are they supposed to see you, right?
Or announced a new Apple TV with a camera. Oh, wait, no, they didn't do that.
No. Yeah, now you can plug in webcams to your non-existent USB port. No, it's the same thing as your Mac with continuity camera. You use your phone. That it will be the microphone and the webcam for it. You basically just set your phone right next to your TV and then go sit down on your couch. And there you go. Whole room FaceTime call. So that's great. Unfortunately, my family, who obviously this is a feature designed for me, thanks Apple, don't all have iPhones. So we can't use FaceTime very easily. Like, yes, technically you can do FaceTime with Android phones through the browser, but it's not a great experience. So they've also introduced an API for this on the Apple TV. And they specifically said that Zoom is one of the apps that is being developed for Apple TV that will also support this functionality. And I could not be more excited for this. So stoked. That's kind of it. They did also the remote app on your iPhone for the Apple TV. You can now use that to find your actual Apple TV remote inside of your house in a very kind of FindMy sort of way. So the remote is not a part of the FindMy network, but the remote app on your phone can sort of use the FindMy network to find it, based on the assumption that you are not going to be taking your Apple TV remote outside of your house, which is pretty reasonable, I feel like. So,
and this is a feature that, I mean, they should have had. I mean, the remote should just have the U1 chip or whatever it is that, you know, makes it so you can use Find My. It should have had that from the beginning, because especially this new one that is super skinny and easy to lose.
I mean, it's not as bad as the black one. The black one was so much worse.
Or that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
The new one is, oh gosh, so much better.
Yeah. And I've heard
this is the remote that sold me an Apple TV. Okay.
I've heard people that are on the beta that have used this do say that it doesn't show an arrow to where it's at.
Right.
But it does, like, if you do get closer to it, like it does the same way with Find My, like with other devices, that the little circle that it's showing does get a little smaller and beeps a little more. So it works that way.
Yeah.
It's not quite as intuitive as regular Find My stuff, but it's nice that it's there.
Yes. It's not as exact because like you said, Landon, it doesn't have the U1 chip in it. Doesn't have that ultra wideband, whatever, stuff. It's just using Bluetooth location stuff. But if you've ever used a tile tracker before, that's all those were, and it works pretty well. It's decent. So yeah, that's nice. It's kind of not really a tvOS feature. It's more of an iOS feature, but they talked about it in the tvOS section because the TV. Anyways, I would ask if you have anything else to add, Landon, but there is nothing else to add. They didn't talk about anything else. So moving on.
tvOS for me is watchOS to you.
That's fair. Though, I mean, tvOS for everyone is watchOS to me. Nobody cares about it, including Apple.
That's fair.
So I just, I want to point out, macOS Sonoma got a game mode. Did tvOS? No, not at all.
Hey, you got Apple Arcade. You're fine.
I mean, it's true. Apple Arcade on tvOS is very nice. Anyways, there's a couple of miscellaneous things that they just sort of sprinkled in there. First of all, hey, so-and-so, to trigger the digital assistant for all of Apple's stuff. You just say her name now,
which is going to make it trigger far more times.
Yeah, it's gonna be that is going to make the false positive so much worse. So thanks, Apple. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So now she already gets so up in arms anytime you say the word serious. It's going to be so much worse now.
Okay,
you can't be serious about anything.
This is kind of a side note, but it has to do with this. So I've got a Google Home Mini, and I have it near my television. And without fail, every time my kids watch the original Toy Story movie, it gets triggered. And at first I was like, why is it doing that? But then I realized that this very specific part at the beginning of the movie, when Woody is right before he's calling the staff meeting, and he's going to get his doodle pad. He says, hey, has anybody seen my doodle pad? And it's got the hey, and doodle sounds close enough to Google that literally every single time my Google Home Mini goes off without fail. And it took me at least like 3 or 4 times to figure out, why is it going off? And then when I realized what it always happened to the same part of the movie, I started paying more attention. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what's doing it. So if you happen to have
amazing.
a HomePod or a HomePod Mini, and you're watching a movie that happens to say seriously at any point in time, it might just make it go off now, which is going to be fun.
Yeah. So that's great. Thanks, Apple. Really appreciate it. They also are adding a feature to the AirPods Pro 2 called adaptive audio, which is like, I think that it's not going to be for everyone. And from what I understand, it is able to be disabled. But this is basically going to take your active noise canceling and your transparency mode, which are 2 different discrete modes for those headphones that are both very good. And it's going to automatically switch between them and change the intensity of their function based on your audio environment. So like if you're just walking around, it's going to out in a noisy environment, active noise canceling on 100%, it's going to automatically be, blocking stuff out. If there's sudden loud noises, it's going to crank up the intensity of the ANC to block out those. But then if somebody walks up to you and starts talking to you, it's going to transfer that over to transparency mode. But they were talking about it in a way that it's like, it's still going to be doing active noise canceling on the loud noises you don't want to listen to.
Yeah.
But it's going to switch that person's conversation into transparency mode for you. So it's basically taking these things and doing software wizardry to kind of blend them into a single thing that is just, so basically instead of having transparency mode and ANC, you just have adaptive audio, you turn it on and the headphones are just going to try and intelligently tailor your audio to what you need it to be in the moment.
Yeah.
So that's dope.
And I am the literal target audience for this because of where I work. So I do have AirPods Pro 2, which is what these will work with. Currently, that's the only AirPods that they will work with. They're not even going to bring these to the AirPods Max, which is interesting. But I have these earbuds, and I work in an environment that is relatively loud. It's a machine shop, so there's constant, relatively loud noise. And I do have to talk to people on occasion. So I'm constantly switching from ANC to transparency mode. And like Caleb said, they both work great. And to me, this is kind of, so the inside of transparency mode now, if you have both earbuds in, it only works with both earbuds in. But if you have both earbuds in on transparency mode and something all of a sudden really loud happens, it does quiet that down, but you can still be talking, which it does work very well. So I'm actually very hopeful for this, that it will work the way they say it will because of the features in transparency mode that we currently have. So I will definitely be trying this out because if I don't have to switch back and forth all the time like I currently do, that's going to be great. And so I will come back, listener, and tell you how this actually works because, like I said, if it works as well as they say, that's fantastic. And I have hopes that it will. I'm not completely assuming that it's going to, but I have hope. So I'm looking forward to this feature quite a bit.
Yep. It does look really cool. All right. So that's Apple's software. WWDC, developer conference, all the, interesting consumer facing stuff and the APIs that are really going to make a big difference in the way that we use Apple devices over the next year and change. Anything else you want to say about their software, Landon? I'm ready to move on. They had some hardware.
No, I think we've covered all the software stuff pretty well.
Okay. All right. Hardware. This is where we really get into the Apple reality distortion field.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about the 15-inch MacBook Air, the quote-unquote best 15-inch laptop in the world. They're convinced. They said it. The exact thing. Like John Turnus said that twice within like 2 minutes of each other. Like they're convinced this is the best 15-inch laptop in the world. My question to anyone who just takes that statement at face value, for what? Like the best for what? Oh my gosh. Are you talking about the best for like watching movies on an airplane? Probably. It probably is the best 15-inch laptop in the world for that. Now, are you talking about the best for, I don't know, holding in your hand, like in one hand for long periods of time, standing in the front of a meeting room that doesn't have anywhere convenient for you to set down your laptop? Absolutely not. Like, I don't even think you want a 15-inch laptop for that at all. And wait, is it the best 15-inch laptop in the world for video rendering or CAD work or anything like that? It's got an M2 processor in it, so it can do those things, but is it the best? Absolutely not. Oh my gosh, you'd want to kill yourself. Like,
it's obviously the best 15-inch laptop for gaming.
That nope, not even with game mode. I'm not gonna like, it's like, that's the thing, is that there are so many workloads that it's not even the best 15-inch laptop that Apple sells for some of those things.
No.
Like, okay, to be clear, the MacBook Pros are 14 inches and 16 inches, and I am sure that that's what Apple would tell you. It's like, you can't compare it to the MacBook Pro because it's a 15-inch laptop. This is a 14 and a 16-inch. Technically, we said best 15-inch laptop in the world. We are correct. I'm still like, that is such a stupid hill to die on, Apple, and I hate it. Anyways, let's talk about what the 15-inch MacBook Air really is. It is the thinnest 15-inch laptop in the world. Okay, I buy that. It is incredibly thin. It is probably the best battery life for a 15-inch laptop in the world at 18 hours, 18 plus, Apple is claiming. That's probably true. And Apple Silicon has demonstrated itself to be incredible in terms of battery life. So yeah, the best 15-inch laptop in the world in terms of performance that does not have active cooling. There is no fan in this thing. It's all passively cooled. Yeah, no, that tracks. That's probably true as well, because honestly, nothing else really competes with Apple Silicon in terms of its ability to perform very well without outputting a whole bunch of heat. So there's a few things that, yes, this probably is the best 15-inch laptop in the world. Has a very nice screen and very nice chassis design, good keyboard, good trackpad, all of these things, true. 6 speakers, I guess. Okay, cool. Thanks, Apple. It's $1,300 starting price, which ain't cheap, but if you're looking for a really long-lasting Ultrabook with a big screen, yeah, it probably is the best kind of in that specific category. Honestly, maybe the best news about this is that the 13-inch MacBook Air is now down $100 at its starting price from $1,200 to $1,100. So that's good. Interestingly, the M1 MacBook Air, Apple still sells that. They did not drop that to $900. That's still $1,000.
Yeah.
WTF, Apple. I think that maybe says something about the fact that the M1 really is probably the most impactful and generally best new laptop that anyone has released for the past, decade. It's kind of a big deal. And the M2 is a nice iterative update, but it's not that much better.
Yeah, everything that I've heard is like, unless you need a computer right now, wait for the M3 to come out, because that's rumored to be a much bigger jump than what the M1 to M2 to from M1 was. So, or if you can be perfectly fine with an M1 at the lower price, get that.
Because or maybe even look for a refurbished or used one.
Yeah, because they are selling those.
Definitely worth considering. All right. Well, speaking of the M2, generally being something that most people say you ought to wait for the M3, let's talk about a new M2 processor. So they are announcing the final iteration of the M2 processor family with the M2 Ultra, right? So we had the M1 Ultra. That was just 2 M1 Maxes glued together. You don't get any points, listener, for guessing that the M2 Ultra is just 2 M2 Maxes glued together. That's what it is. It's exactly that. And then when announcing it, they announced that it's twice as fast as the M2 Max. And I'm like, well, it better be. It's 2 of them. This is really basic, guys. So yeah, interesting things about the M2 Ultra. Aside from, it's 2 M2 Maxes, it's twice as fast as the M2 Max. We already talked about the specs of the M2 Max, listener, like back when they added it to the MacBook Pro. you can go listen to that episode if you want the specs of the M2 Max and just double that. That's the M2 Ultra. Problem solved. It does have up to 192 gigs of on-chip RAM. So like it's normal RAM, but it's sort of like HBM RAM, where it's like the die is literally on, like it's touching the actual CPU die. It's very, very close to the CPU, and that means that their bandwidth is enormous and their latency is tiny between the RAM and the CPU. So it's not that much RAM compared to like extremely high-end workstations, but it is really fast and basically acts more as like CPU cache than it does RAM, which is good because the only GPU in the system is also a part of the M2 Ultra system on chip. So worth noting. They also announced new Mac Studios with the M2 Max and the M2 Ultra. I guess nobody's really surprised to see that. There they are. Yay! The Mac Studio is a good computer. And then, to complete the conversion from Intel to Apple Silicon, they have finally updated the Mac Pro.
Yeah, finally.
You can get a Mac Pro with an M2 Ultra in it. That's it. Just the Ultra. There have two versions of the Ultra. One has slightly fewer GPU cores, and then a couple of different like levels of how much RAM you can get in it. I think the lowest one is like 64 gigs.
Yes.
So, that's okay. But it starts with the M2 Ultra and goes up to better M2 Ultras, essentially. Yeah. It's worth noting that this thing now starts at $7,000 instead of $5,000.
Ugh.
But the starting configuration of this computer will absolutely slay the starting configuration of the $5,000 computer, and conveniently will absolutely destroy the $7,000 version of the Intel-based Mac Pro that it is replacing. So at the same price point, you are getting ridiculously more performance. So it's good. It's not a bad thing. The main takeaway here is that you get 8 PCIe Gen 4 slots inside of the chassis that you can use to connect expansion cards to your M2 Mac instead of having to use a whack ton of Thunderbolt enclosures plugged into the back of the thing like you had to do with the Mac Studio. So for folks that use a bunch of add-in cards like music producers and video producers and stuff like that, this actually is a really nice thing to have. 2 of those slots are taken up by I/O cards that Apple ships that give you stuff like 6 Thunderbolt ports, 2 gigabit Ethernet ports, stuff like that. You don't have to use those. You can take them out when you get the machine and recapture those PCIe slots if you need to. If you just really don't want 6 Thunderbolt ports, I guess. I don't know, to each their own. So yeah, plenty of room for expansion inside of this thing. Even with those 2 cards, you still get 6 expansion slots. Now, you may notice, listener, that I didn't say anything about the GPU that is going to be taking up several of those expansion slots. It's because there aren't any. The GPU is on the M2 Ultra. You get that 40 GPU cores, I think it is. There's 2 configurations of it.
There's a 60 core and a 76 core on the Ultra.
Okay. 60 core and a 76 core on the GPU for that one. You may also notice that I didn't say anything about being able to swap out the RAM like you could on the previous Mac Pro. Not a thing. Okay, so plenty of room for expansion via internal PCIe like expansion cards. No room for upgrades, right? Like, to be clear, you cannot change out Apple's processor and GPU and stuff like that. And it doesn't, like, Apple has not hinted at all that you're going to be able to put third-party GPUs in there. Okay?
Yeah. So, like, to me, I see this, I'm like, why would anybody... Well, okay. There are going to be people that could use those PCIe slots. But
yes,
for the vast majority of people that even need this computing power, don't buy the Studio, because the starting price, like the base Studio and the base Mac Pro, literally exact same configuration. everything is the same. The base price for the Mac Studio, $4,000. The base price for the Mac Pro, $7,000. And the only difference is you get a bigger case, like a giant case that is just empty inside because it's freaking massive, and the PCIe slots that you can add storage to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are tons of PCIe expansion cards that do, you can add really fast storage to them. You can even boot off of that storage if you really want to do that. Like, that's an option. But they also, there's stuff that are like audio interfaces or video ingest interfaces and like controllers for like specific things and that kind of thing. There's a rack mount version of this available, like inside of the data center. You can like daisy chain these things together through expansion cards to increase their compute power and that sort of thing. Now, that's a great way to make a render farm, and you can totally use these things to like add scientific equipment via an internal card, or to like, honestly, audio interfaces are probably where most of this makes sense for professionals in the field. But yeah, the honest truth is, if you're a pro who uses a Mac and you want the Mac software, you've got Mac workflows and stuff like that, but you don't want, or you don't use a whole bunch of third-party interface cards, there's no reason to get the Mac Pro. In the past, you would have gotten the Mac Pro because it had the most powerful Intel processors in it, because nothing else could dissipate the heat from them, and because it would give you the ability to upgrade your RAM or upgrade your GPU at some point in the future. That is simply not the case anymore. This is basically just a Mac Studio that is going to allow you to put all of your interface cards inside of the computer instead of daisy chaining them via Thunderbolt into the back of it, right? It cleans up your desk. That is it. Okay? So this is Apple taking the already very narrow audience of the Mac Pro and narrowing it in even more.
Yeah.
Okay. I honestly kind of am okay with that because they introduced the Mac Studio last year.
Right.
Right? Like, the Mac Studio sort of takes the audience that has been abandoned by the Mac Pro and says, look, you don't have to worry about being able to upgrade it in the future because it costs so much less now. Right? And you'll be able to upgrade it. And the fact that they've upgraded the Mac Studio suggests that, the Mac Studio is going to continue to be around. So when you need to upgrade in the future, you can just buy a new Mac Studio and resell the old one. Mac computers, they hold their resale value very, very well. In fact, when you want to sell off your old Mac Studio, call me. Please. I want it.
Yeah, me too.
So, I feel like it makes some sense what they're doing here. But it is a very it's a narrower slice of the market that they're targeting with this new Mac Pro. And actually, I do want to mention that, that $3,000 difference between the base model the base Ultra, M2 Ultra version of the Mac Studio versus the M2 Ultra, base model of the Mac Pro. Several $1,000s of difference there, mostly because that giant case, that ridiculously overkill motherboard, that I think still 1600 watt power supply that they put in the basement of that thing. Okay. Apple over-engineers the crap out of everything they do. And when they're selling extremely high volume products like the iPhone, still kind of over-engineered, but because they're selling so many of them, the costs of each individual one come down so much that they can charge, generally speaking, industry standard prices for them. But when it comes to their high-end computers, they're not selling anywhere close to enough of them to bring those costs down. Now, most other companies, they just have lower profit margins on their very high-end stuff. They don't charge as much money for it so that people can buy them, their Halo products, for a little bit cheaper, just to make them look good. It's a marketing thing. Don't think there's anything wrong with that. Apple does not do that. They put a 60% price markup on absolutely everything they sell. That's their profit margin. And it doesn't matter if it's a high volume product that they can make for a very small amount of money, charge a 60% markup, sell it for the same price as everyone else, or if it's an extremely low volume product like the Mac Pro with its extremely overkill case, its absolutely ridiculous overkill motherboard, and its hilarious overkill power supply, which honestly, you're never going to be able to max out the power supply in these new Mac Pros. It's impossible with the stuff that you can actually put in these things. You can't put in Intel processors. You can't put in NVIDIA or AMD GPUs. Nothing else uses that kind of power. So you can't do it. But Apple still makes the thing, takes how much it costs to make it, 60% markup, you're paying $7,000. That's Apple.
Yeah.
Good times. Mac hardware, Apple hardware in general, always an interesting thing to be buying that stuff and look at the prices and think about the prices. And on that note, Landon, do you have one more thing?
Well,
Because Tim sure did.
okay. Tim is
This one wasn't as
absolute,
bad.
He is so bad at these one more things.
He really is.
Because he makes them out to be way bigger than, like, he goes, one more thing. I'm like, dude, shut up. You are not.
So.
The thing that made the one more thing so good in the past is Steve would be like, oh, and we have one more thing. And that's what it was. And then he would talk about it. It wasn't
like, with
big
Steve,
thing.
It was like, you didn't know. It's like Steve gets up there and is all like, you know what? Like, we just talked about this. We just talked about this. We just talked about this. All these great things. We're really excited for you guys. We have demos out in the lobby, whatever, yada, yada, yada. We hope to see you back next year. But, wait a second. We have one more thing. And then, oh my gosh, the crowd went wild because it caught everybody by surprise. We're all like, oh my gosh, we didn't know this was coming. I'm sorry, Tim. We all knew you were launching a VR headset. Like, everybody knew that this was coming at this event. And the fact that you made such a big deal out of the one more thing, like the one more thing itself was the moment that people were cheering for. No, people were cheering for basically Steve Jobs' showmanship. Yeah. Anyways, Apple Vision Pro. Speaking of hardware that Apple makes that costs a ridiculous amount of money for them to make, and they charge a 60% markup and then just sell it for that, is the most expensive VR headset in the world. And I'm including stuff that they sell to, like, the military and that sort of thing, okay? Like, this is a ridiculous thing. Now, Apple with this, we talked about the reality distortion field associated with the best 15-inch laptop in the world. The Vision Pro presentation was drenched in the distortion field, okay?
Oh my gosh.
They made the comment several times that nobody was making anything even comparable to the Vision Pro. And I'm like, Apple, have you heard of Meta? Like Oculus? Any of these ringing a bell? The Valve, what did they call this? I can't remember. I can never remember what they called their headset. Valve's headset, whatever it was. Like, look, I'm not saying that Apple didn't make the best VR headset in the world, because I feel like they did. They absolutely did. This thing does things that no other VR headset can do. But that doesn't mean there are no comparable devices. Like, the Meta Quest Pro is a pretty comparable device. It costs $1,000, which means it's $2,500 less than the Vision Pro, but it's still a comparable device, right? Like, it is the first thing that you could point at and say, you know what, this feels a lot like, what would you call it? Spatial computing, which is another term that Apple coined. They refused to say VR. They refused to say AR. No. It is a spatial computer. That's what this thing is. And I feel safe to say that that's not inaccurate, I guess. And that's fair to call this high-end spatial computing, because if we want to say that this is spatial computing, there are other devices that do this. So those are spatial computers. This one is the highest end, for sure. But Apple, you didn't invent this concept. Frickin' just calm down. Anyways, Vision Pro is a standalone AR/VR headset, quote-unquote spatial computer, that Apple is releasing. We've kind of been expecting this for a little while. Plenty of leaks about it, I will say. Of all of the renders that were made based on the rumors of this thing up to its launch, none of them were right. Yeah. And thank heavens for that.
Yeah. This is probably the best looking headset.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
So yes,
Index.
the price.
It's the Valve Index. Gosh dang it. It just came to me.
That's what it is. So the
There it
price
is.
on this thing, yes, is absolutely ridiculous at $3,500. That being said, the materials that they used for this thing are kind of like the hardware itself almost justifies the price tag because it is absolutely the best hardware you could possibly get
Yes.
for a headset. They made this, like they said, the best headset that you can buy because it is impressive. The hardware alone is very impressive.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Between the materials that they were using, the manufacturing tooling that they would have to they'd have to spool up in order to put this stuff together, to say nothing of the actual manufacturing of the hardware that has gone into the headset, it absolutely feels like a headset that just to assemble this thing would cost probably $1,000, more, maybe $1,200-$1,300 per headset. In terms of material and manufacturing costs, not even talking about development, just to make the thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And from what it sounds like is each one that is going to be purchased is relatively customized to the person that is buying it.
Yeah. To a certain extent.
To an extent. Cause even they said the little part that goes to your face is sized. I mean, they could probably have 10 or so different molds that you can go from, but it's still 10 or so different molds that they have to choose from. And so that takes more material, more processing and stuff to make it. So it's crazy.
So 100% in terms of just manufacturing the thing, it's a very expensive device to manufacture, and they're not going to sell that many of them. And so those costs go up. But then Apple being Apple, they just slapped their 60% profit margin onto the thing and sold it for $3,500. So, the price makes sense in my head. It's the same reason that the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro are very expensive devices. It's not because they aren't worth that. It's because Apple is not willing to eat any of their profit on those low volume, high end devices the way that some other companies would, like Meta. Because I can pretty much guarantee that the Meta Quest Pro, it does not cost $300 to make that thing. It probably costs more like $600 or $700. They're making a little bit of profit by selling it at $1,000, but not even close to the profit that Apple will be making off of this thing when they finally actually sell it.
I would compare Meta's hardware profit type thing with Apple to Amazon hardware profit.
Yes,
they're not making money off the hardware they're selling. They're making money off of other things.
Yes. Facebook makes money off of the metaverse, not off of the Oculus Quest.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. As much as I'm going to describe a whole bunch of things, listener, that sound like Ready Player One / the end of civilization as we know it with the Vision Pro, I think it's worth noting that at the very least, Apple is selling you expensive hardware as opposed to selling you, which is what Facebook does.
Yeah.
So,
speaking of Ready Player One, someone pointed this out and I thought it was very funny. So the intro to Vision Pro, was kind of a pan to someone putting it on, is literally the beginning of Ready Player One.
It really was, yeah. When he puts on the headset right at the beginning.
It is almost shot for shot identical to the beginning of Ready Player One. And we all know how that plays out.
Exactly. So, I'm not making any social claims about this. Just if you've read or watched any dystopian fiction in the past couple of years, listener, I'm going to describe a whole bunch of stuff that are going to make you think of Blade Runner, and I'm sorry. Okay. So let's talk about what this thing actually is. Okay. As Apple introduced it, it's not really just a VR headset the way that we're used to VR headsets. They talk about it in terms of spatial computing, and that's definitely what they were showing off more, was this device as a computer, as a personal computer, more than it is an entertainment device. I mean, okay, there's a lot of entertainment stuff associated with it, but they're trying to broaden it to be more than just, you can play some games with this thing, right? So, in terms of the hardware, it is micro OLED displays, each of which has a higher resolution than a 4K TV, right? So 65-inch TV, but they're an inch.
Yeah.
Which is freaking insane. The pixel density on these things has got to be absolutely bananas, which is part of the reason why this thing costs $3,500 to make. You want to talk about not having any screen door effect on the thing? pretty much guarantee there won't be any on this.
Yeah,
Just
it's gonna
unless
be
your
great.
eyes are outstandingly good. So yeah, it's got those whole bunch of eye tracking sensors around the screens, around the lenses inside of the device. On the outside, it's got extremely high resolution cameras, spaced where the eyes would be, so that it can play back images of your surroundings in a very high resolution, similar to what the the Meta Quest Pro does, but possibly even better because, cameras might be even higher resolution. I'm not
Probably.
sure. They didn't tell us what the resolution of the cameras was. There's a bunch of additional sensors that are kind of around the bottom of the front of the Vision Pro as well, that are down there for tracking purposes, like tracking your environment as well as tracking you as a person. These all sit underneath basically a plate of glass that is 3D formed curved glass, covers all of this up and gives it a very unified front look. That glass is actually very important because it also covers up the eyesight screen. Okay.
So
Which
bad.
just freaking Apple. I hate their marketing department. You did not need to brand the screen on the front of your headset. I'm sorry. It was not necessarily, but they did.
Especially-
EYESIGHT.
Especially eyesight when it is technically different than what eyesight used to be. But if you
Because
think of
that
what
was
eyesight used to be,
That was an
was
eye.
a potato camera on your
Yes.
computer. And if you're calling this the same thing, just spelling out eye, people are going to think that that's what I thought of when they said eyesight. I'm like,
So
this is
bad.
going to be garbage. It's not, but it is because it's that name.
It's not garbage, but it is sort of garbage. So what this has is like an OLED display on the front of the device facing outward, right? This is not for you. This is for the room around you, that uses the eye tracking sensors on the inside of the thing to display your eyes to the outside world so that they can see you as if you're wearing ski goggles as opposed to wearing a full-on headset. Now, to be clear, this is it's an OLED display that is like underneath a lenticular lens so that it changes the perspective as people move around the front of the device so that it will look like your eyes are recessed back so that they're in the same plane as your face instead of being set like 3 inches forward. But it still looks creepy AF. Like, it's so weird. Just to be clear. All of this is powered by an M2 processor in terms of the actual computing. So they're using the M2 in here and an R1 coprocessor. Okay. I feel like that's probably the more interesting of the two because the M2, we know what the M2 is. It's a good processor. It's low energy, doesn't output a ton of heat, which is what allows this to be such kind of a svelte, thin device while still having like way more power than any other standalone VR headset up to this point. Like freaking Meta, they're like, oh yeah, ours can do this stuff too. The metaverse is very social and we're all like, whatever. It's like, shut up, Zuck. The fact of the matter is you're using a Qualcomm processor in this thing. Nah, you're like not even in the same ballpark of performance as Apple is.
Yeah, definitely.
So
not.
worth noting. But the R1 coprocessor is actually the more interesting of these to me because one of the issues that we have with these standalone VR headsets is that, a lack of processing means that the input that is coming from the sensors that are keeping track of where the remotes in your hands are, that are keeping track of the environment tracking around you and stuff like that, all of that has to be processed before it can be turned into an image and fed to your eyes, right? We've got to put overlays onto it. We've got to, use gyroscopes to move stuff around. And so they're taking a bunch of input from a bunch of sensors, trying to process it into a coherent image and then display it to you. The M2 isn't doing that. That's all the R1. And that's all the R1 does. It does nothing else. All it's doing is taking input from the sensors and using that to update the image shown to your eyes. Okay? Apple is claiming 12 milliseconds of lag, which is, to the human perception, basically nothing. Like, that is so little lag that you would honestly be hard-pressed to notice any kind of slewing or anything like that as you move the device around. It should basically respond instantaneously, if Apple isn't lying about the amount of lag that there is. So that means motion sickness. For people that are prone to motion sickness, you might not actually have any on this headset. Like if you've tried a VR headset before and you kind of got sick because what you were seeing wasn't quite matching up with what your body was actually doing, in theory, the Vision Pro shouldn't have that problem thanks to this R1 coprocessor. So
yeah, that and the fact that
pretty
you
cool.
can have it, like you can see things around you if you want, which is beneficial. And I mean, obviously the videos that they show are going to be probably, well, might be better than what actually you experience, but if they're as good as they are, then it is almost like you're looking through, not like it's like a window. It's not
right.
I mean, you're obviously looking at a screen, but it does look like it could be really good.
And the biggest things that help with that are having extremely high resolution displays that update at a fast refresh rate, because that gets rid of the screen door effect, and having no latency between what the cameras and the sensors on the outside of the device are picking up and what gets displayed to your eyes. Like those two things are absolutely crucial to avoid motion sickness of any kind. The Meta Quest Pro does the whole like color, like full color, high resolution video pass through directly to your eyes. And from what I understand, if you're sitting at a table using it as basically like an extension of a monitor for keyboard and mouse and stuff like that, it works pretty well, but it's not perfect. And there are people that still get motion sickness from devices like that, even higher end VR headsets. So the fact that Apple has dedicated an entire Apple Silicon processor to doing nothing but real-time processing of the sensor data, that actually is very encouraging, that they have really targeted this problem of fixing it. So, what other hardware things do they have going on? Oh yeah, the spatial audio without headphones via the audio pods that are just on the strap of the device.
Such a bad name.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, so apparently it does audio ray tracing, which isn't a thing, to be clear. That's another buzzword that Apple made up. Again, the reality distortion field in full effect around the Vision Pro. But yeah, they're like, it's basically the same thing that the HomePod does by, just trying to use audio feedback from around you to figure out what the shape of the room is and the context of the room so that it can help do better spatial audio. That's all it is. But they decided to, again, brand the concept with audio ray tracing. Okay, thanks, Apple. Nice insertion of a buzzword. Yeah. So it's a fully contained device, sort of, as long as you don't consider a battery to be important. Yes. So you can plug the thing in via a tether directly to power, in which case it'll just, it's just a computer plugged into the wall. It'll do its thing. Or it comes with a battery that you wear at your waist and that, tethers onto the side of the headset. I understand why they did this. It makes it so that it's easier to adjust and change out the headbands, so that because you're not putting it like on the back of the headband. And it also lowers the weight of the device on the front of your head, which, as an owner of a VR headset, that's good. Less weight is good. So I understand why they did it. It's kind of a compromise to what they were really going for as a completely self-contained unit, but I think it's probably the right compromise given, the limitations at play.
Yeah.
Also, this is actually kind of fun. Retina scanning. So that's the thing. They call it optic ID. That's the security for the thing. Like it's kind of like Face ID, except it's your eye instead of your face. And it is genuinely doing like, IR scans of your eyeballs to look at like the vein patterns inside of your eyes and then authenticating based off of that. It's a genuine retina scanner, which is dope AF. Like,
yeah,
frankly.
I mean, I'm looking at this thing right here, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 sensors per eye.
Yeah.
And 2 cameras per eye as well.
Yep.
Like, it's
cameras
ridiculous.
used for the eye tracking. And the sensors, I think, are equally split between the IR receivers and the IR lamps,
tracking,
right?
Yeah.
Like that are going to actually broadcast into your eyes. So yeah, like it's a very cool piece of hardware for sure. Let's talk a little bit about Vision OS, which is the operating system for it, because of course it is. Thanks, Apple. At least they're being consistent, I guess. Okay, whatever. Vision OS is controlled via your gaze and gestures, right? You may have noticed when I'm talking about the hardware, I didn't say anything about the remotes for it. It's because there are none. Okay? You control this with your hands. That's most of the sensors that are directed down on the front of the thing are actually there so that they can see your hands. And that's how you control this, by gesturing, by pinching, by pushing, like two-handed gestures and stuff like that. That's how it does it. So basically, like, the interface hovers in the air in front of you as you're using the device. You look at the part of the interface you want to interact with, and then you gesture. Like, you tap your fingers together to click on it, or you pinch and you drag to move the interface around, and to zoom in and out and make things larger, turn things around, stuff like that. That's all the control. Okay? It can be used with a mouse and keyboard as well. You can hook it up to a Bluetooth mouse, Bluetooth keyboard, and use it that way. But you can also have a virtual keyboard and just try and type in thin air. That sounds terrible.
That sounds... Well,
woo!
Yeah, that just sounds horrible.
Yep. Can't even imagine how bad that will be. But Bluetooth keyboard, use that. Just use a physical keyboard.
Or just
theoretically,
speak what you want to type.
That's true. You can do voice controls for a lot of things as well. It uses, as a spatial computer, it sort of uses the environment around you as your canvas, right? Your monitor space is everything around you. So you can like put stuff in one area and then turn to the side and do something else over there. And when you turn back, whatever you had in the first place is going to still be there, and that sort of thing. So like multitask, like simultaneous running apps and that sort of thing is a thing that they talked about quite a bit with Vision OS. They also have enabled it so that you can use it with a Mac. You can use it kind of as the monitor for a Mac and run Vision OS apps alongside it. So basically it's like a remote desktop instance into your Mac, where it displays that remote desktop instance in a window in front of you, and then you have your Vision OS stuff still going on around you. If you don't want to work wherever you're sitting, you can also turn on like virtual reality environments it's just a virtual reality world that kind of surrounds you. I think what was interesting about that is that they're all like, but it's not going to cut you off from your surroundings. Anybody that approaches you will just magically appear. And they showed somebody like walking up to the person in the video and sitting down next to them, and they just sort of like faded into existence off to one side of them. And I was like, that would be really startling if you didn't like hear them coming, you know? Like, geez Louise, I would probably wet my pants. Like, so I don't know, maybe you get used to it. Yeah, they also talked about how it has a 3D camera on it, right? Because it is obviously a 3D camera because it's a VR headset, you know, like it has to be. But so it's got two cameras on the front of it that shoot 3D space in front of it. And they talked about how you can use that to like capture special moments with your kids that you'll be able to enjoy in 3D in the future on your Vision Pro. And I'm sitting there like, yes, because I want to be wearing this monstrosity of a hideous ski goggle mask thing and be viewing my special moments with my children on a screen as they're happening.
Right. That was the dumbest thing in this whole keynote. And
it really was.
And almost everyone I've seen agrees. It's like, no, Apple, that is the wrong way to be. Like they're trying to sell this as a social product. And VR headsets aren't that. They are very individualistic products. Like, you are in this by yourself. Yes, you can do FaceTime and stuff like that, but like, especially this type of thing, it's like, this is why people hated Google Glass, is because people, and that was way less intrusive than this.
Yeah.
So it's like, you really think people are going to do this? I mean, there's going to be some, but they are not good parents.
No,
I'm sorry.
They're not. And that's the thing. Like, they kept showing like, oh, a dude working in an office at a design studio or something like that, and like interacting with his coworkers and stuff with the goggles on. And I'm just like, that is one of the biggest social faux pas I have ever seen in my life. Like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Meta's metaverse is like the future of social VR, because I think the metaverse is stupid. And like, of all of the companies on the planet in like to actually put that into play, Meta is the company I would trust to do that the least,
Yeah.
you know? But at least they're kind of giving you a sense of social that is like everybody is wearing a headset. Everybody is having a digital interaction with each other, right? Whereas what Apple's trying to tell you is that, no, you can still socialize in person while you're wearing our headset. And I'm like, no. We're still trying to get used to the concept of socializing in person while somebody keeps their AirPods in their ear. Apple, we have not gotten to the point where you can wear ski goggles that blink out your face and yet replace them with this really weird parallaxed version of their eyes and tell me that that's a good way to interact socially. Like, nope. This is, like I said, this is Blade Runner Ready Player One crap that nobody's going to buy that. Not for a while. So, yeah, it is a very inherently personal experience. And if you do end up using this at work and somebody walks into your office and they fade into existence in your whatever little screen, freaking take the goggles off to talk to them, please. Like, just don't be that way. Anyways, speaking of FaceTime, Landon mentioned FaceTime. Vision Pro will also do FaceTime, which I guess isn't surprising. All of Apple's devices do FaceTime at this point, even the TV. But what's really interesting about that is, how do they show you? Like, right? You're going to have to stand in front of a mirror so that the cameras on the outside can pick up your face? Just no. Oh, it's great. So much better than that. You take the goggles off and you train FaceTime using the external cameras on the goggles to do a 3D scan of your face. Then you put them on and it generates a 3D avatar, like photorealistic, quote unquote, 3D avatar of you to show to the other callers on the FaceTime call. And this is so deep into the uncanny valley that it is honestly like treading new depths. It looks so janky and bizarre and unreal.
Like,
ooh.
You know, with how much Apple has pushed Memoji the last 10 years, why didn't they just do that? People are used to that at this point.
Yeah.
And it actually looks decent. It's way better than the emoji that other companies have done for your face or whatnot. Like, Memoji actually it works and it looks okay. People are fine with a cartoon version of you.
Yes.
Talking to them.
Well, that's the thing. That's the key. It's a cartoon, and you can tell it's not supposed to look real. Whereas if one of these weird things, Vision OS things, pops up on your FaceTime call and starts talking, you're just going to be sitting there like, oh, why does this make me feel so wrong?
Yeah.
Like, why do I feel like I'm looking at an alien and like my primate brain is telling me to run? Like, what's going on here? And like, say what you will about the crappy metaverse avatars that Meta has put out for their devices. They're pretty crap. They don't look as good as Memoji, and they're certainly nowhere near as nice as what they claimed they were going to be shipping with the metaverse when they first announced it. But I'd almost rather have that than this thing.
I'd rather have my what's the Me things from Nintendo. I'd rather have that.
Yes. Yeah, no, those would be great, actually. Yeah. Let's do that. All right. So that's the Vision Pro. That's Vision OS. There's a lot of really compelling stuff going on here. Like hand tracking, the fact that is supposedly working as well as it is. And honestly, some hand-on videos from people that actually got to spend some time with the Vision Pro headset. Obviously, they weren't able to film anything, but they spent some time with it, gave us their reactions. Like MKBHD had some reactions to it and stuff like that. Sounds like the hand tracking works very well. Sounds like Vision Pro is very smooth. The hardware, it's outstanding. It's best in class. There are no other headsets that even approach this in terms of the quality of the screens, in terms of the quality of the cameras, in terms of the quality of the built-in audio. All of this stuff, it's just the best in its class. It is not, as Apple would have you believe, the only option, but it is the best quality option for sure. And at $3,500, very expensive, but this is the first high-end spatial computing platform. And I feel like, that price is one of the growing pains. Interesting things about it. They talked a lot about how, you can turn this into your personal movie theater, which is the thing that VR headsets have been able to do for ages. And it is a legitimate and very nice use case for them. But they talked about gaming on it, but all they showed was people playing games on a big screen in front of them, not like actual VR games. And I will say that maybe that's just because they don't have any VR games ported to Vision OS right now, which makes sense. And maybe people will be porting games to Vision OS, but no matter how good the hand tracking is, a lot of VR games are built around the idea that you're holding something in your hand.
Yeah, the most popular game on any VR headset is Beat Saber.
Exactly.
And
try to play Beat Saber without holding something in your hand. If Beat Saber comes to the Vision Pro, which it probably will, let's be honest, it's on everything else. It's probably on Google Glass at this point. I wouldn't be surprised. But if Beat Saber comes to the Vision Pro, you're going to, at the very least, want to get a couple of toilet paper tubes and hold those in your hand, because otherwise it's going to feel weird AF. To try and play that game with just nothing in your hands. I don't know. Oh gosh, it's uncomfortable to think about.
I will say the game that should come to this is Fruit Ninja.
Yes.
Because I remember playing Fruit Ninja on an Xbox with a Kinect, and you got to use your hand, your entire body, and that was a lot of fun. That would actually be a game that would be probably a lot of fun on Vision Pro. But yes, Beat Saber honestly, or something like that would be interesting.
The display of it is this is your blade, quote unquote. But the way you've always played Fruit Ninja was with a finger. So slashing at the air with your hands would actually feel pretty natural. Karate chop those watermelons and whatnot. So VR games as we know them and love them could absolutely come to the Vision Pro and probably will. But I do think that there's a lot of them Super Hot. It's a great game. You hold a gun. You're going to want to grab something to hold that feels because otherwise WTF, it's just going to feel so flippin' strange. So there's a lot of unanswered questions about where this platform is going to go. The Vision Pro itself, hardware, is not going to be shipping to customers until next year. Early 2024 is what they said at the event. Though they are going to be making developer kits available to developers here in the next couple of months. So, we'll just keep an eye on the platform and let you know how it shakes out from here, listener. But unless you've got anything else to add to that, Landon, then I think we're finally done.
I kind of mentioned this at the beginning of the Vision Pro discussion. As ridiculous as the price is, I do believe it's worth that price because of the hardware and because of the hands-on experiences that people have talked about. They do say that it is really good. The hand tracking is really good. The eye tracking is phenomenal from all the videos and articles I've read about people that actually got to use it. They say it's really good. Just being able to look somewhere and tap your fingers together and it just works is very impressive. So I do think it is worth that price. And I do think that if developers can try to utilize this really well, it could be a game changer in the space. And I think it will be anyways. But if developers utilize this hardware, it'll show to other companies like Meta, like HTC with their stuff, like PlayStation even with their, and Valve and whatnot, that, okay, we can actually put some money into this stuff and make it good. And those other companies will probably make better hardware than what they currently have. It'll be like the MetaQuest Pro. They can start making stuff in that price range or even a little cheaper that more consumers are going to buy, and we'll be able to, benefit from Apple doing this. And the fact that this is called the Vision Pro leads you to believe that there will be just a regular Vision someday down the road at that $1,000 price point, hopefully, maybe $1,500 just because Apple tax. But even still, if we could get even like half of this type of hardware, like a plastic version of this, that's phenomenal,
Yeah.
Like you still get the same chipset that's in there, but just with a little like not metal hardware, that's fine. It'll do the same stuff, So I'm actually am more excited about this than I thought I was going to be. And like obviously I'm not going to buy one because that's a lot of freaking money that I am not going to waste on something like this. But I genuinely want to try one. Don't know if I ever will have the opportunity in the next 5 years to do that, but I want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing is like, this is an instance of one of Apple's better entries into an existing market, which, to be clear, listener, once again, as Apple's not going to tell you this, but there is in fact an existing market here. Like this is not the first device of its type. But like, where they have come in with their giant piles of money and they basically told their engineers, hey, here's what we really want it to feel like. We want it to feel like the most natural, like basically we want it to feel like Iron Man's computer from the first Iron Man movie, where he's got the, 3D model, whatever, and he's just pinching and dragging and throwing crap around and it just looks super cool. We want it to feel like that. Do whatever you have to do to get it to feel like that. And they spared no expense, right? Like they did the work. Yeah. They put together the hardware necessary to make it happen, developed new things as needed in order to get it to work. And then they didn't cut any corners. They didn't look at that high-end, like Halo product experience and go, okay, now let's bring it back down so that it's a little bit more affordable. They went, awesome, sell it.
Yeah.
It's going to be ridiculously expensive, but who flipping cares? Nobody else can touch it. And okay, that's what they did. And it's a really good first showing. The price is obviously way too expensive for most people to even consider buying it. And yeah, listener, that's probably you. Unless you literally just have money to throw away, don't. Just don't even think about it. Like, it's not worth it. But it's a starting point. And it's the kind of thing where, like Landon said, it's the Pro. There will be an Apple Vision at some point in time that costs less, that is more attainable to average consumers. And that's probably going to be the one that people are going to look at and go like, yeah, this is the one that ended up changing the industry, because the Vision Pro, as it was introduced, was too expensive. And that's fine. Like, they got to start somewhere. And I appreciate that, unlike most of, unlike Meta, who started their whole standalone headset process with the original Meta Quest, which, as an owner of one, is a cool toy, but that's it.
Yeah.
They're starting from the top with something that feels like it might actually be a high-end, usable, like very usable product, not a tech demo that is fun to mess around with. So, okay, I'm all right with that. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah. I also, like, the more I've thought about this over the last week, is I could see this happening where it could be another Apple Watch experience where Apple, when they came out with the Apple Watch, was marketing it very much as a fashion device. Like, that's what it was. And then consumers told them, no, this is a fitness device. And so they pivoted, and now that's what they focus on. Like, they don't have a gold Apple Watch anymore because that was dumb. And they learned and like, hey, we don't need to do that anymore. They don't even have a ceramic Apple Watch anymore because, again, it's not a fashion product. Yes, it's a watch. You do wear it, but it's a fitness watch. Now, I don't necessarily think the Vision Pro could change quite as drastically as that, but I could see, Apple is marketing it as this, but this is actually how consumers are going to use it. And so, we need to change how we focus on this device.
And I think it's fair to say that pivot's probably going to happen in both directions in the early years of the Vision platform.
Right.
Because we got the Vision Pro now where Apple's like spatial computing. And I think they're going to release the normal Vision and consumers are going to be like, VR games. And that's what it's going to be for a while. before maybe Apple is able to pivot it back in the direction of this quote unquote spatial computing revolution that they want to have happen. It's honestly, it may end up feeling an awful lot like the iPad has been slowly becoming more and more an actual computer replacement, where it was not to begin with. It was an entertainment device, media consumption device, and that was pretty much it. And the Vision Pro, they've presented it as spatial computing, but I suspect it's probably going to be a whole lot of VR games, and they're slowly going to be able to push it more towards being a standalone computer. Like, this is your only computer, is a Vision Pro. Maybe at some point in the future, probably not for a while, though.
And the other thing that got, like, one of the most exciting parts for me was when they brought out Bob Iger from Disney. He's the CEO of Disney. And he talked about what Disney is planning on doing. Like, Disney Plus is going to be available day one for this. And it makes sense. It's on other headsets. But the stuff that they showcased that they're planning on doing with this headset, which will come to other headsets as well, is really cool. Like, they showed like a little bit from like Mandalorian type stuff. And it had like, you could watch the show in front of you. And then you could also, like, it had different little, not for lack of a better term, stats on the other side. Like, they also showed it with sports. Like, they showed a college football game, and on the side it had team stats, and then player stats, and then other scores from around different things, you know? So, like, things like that is where, like Caleb said, this is going to be used as an entertainment device first, not a computing device, not for most people at least. Right. And that's how VR headsets are used now, is entertainment devices. Yes, you can use these as computing devices. They're just not great for that yet. Down the road, they could be. And I think Apple is the right company to get into that space because of the M2 processor, partially. Yeah, and because of
Apple Silicon.
They've been a computing company. They put out products that do provide entertainment, but they're a computer company. So they do know that better than what Meta can do when it comes to that.
Yeah. And I think that that's fair to say that, like, Apple sees this as a replacement for a computer, sort of like they have seen the iPad as a replacement for a computer for a very long time. But right now, it is the only headset with a desktop class processor in it. Absolutely. No, nobody else is even close to that. So they're definitely a lot closer than anyone else is. But the software platform is just too immature at this point for it to really be anything more than an entertainment device. And as an entertainment device or an entertainment venue, it's going to be really good. Not going to justify the price for most people. Right. But over time, Apple may very well be able to turn this into the kind of thing that, like they said toward the end of their little thing, that is going to be able to replace your Mac and your keyboard and your mouse and your monitors and your everything. This is your entire computer right there. And when you're talking about that, if you're buying a Mac plus one of their ridiculously overpriced monitors plus their ridiculously overpriced keyboard and mouse, that's pretty much $3,000 right there anyway. So maybe you may as well just buy a Vision Pro and have all of it integrated, which just don't buy Apple's peripherals. They're not good. For the money, they're terrible. But, that maybe that argument will make sense at some point in the future. We'll give them some time. Okay. Wes, are you still there?
I'm here. I am.
He's still alive.
Zoning a little.
That's valid.
The meds don't help.
Well, I think we've officially made it through WWDC. So
I will be honest with one thing. That headset, man. I've seen so many memes on that thing. It's just, I think the memes are what's the best thing that's come out of this, other than that price tag, I guess.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's pretty gnarly. That's my comments on WWDC.
Check out the memes. The Vision Pro memes are, honestly, though, what cracks me up the most about, everybody who made a video about the Vision Pro had the exact same video thumbnail. It's them with the Vision Pro photoshopped over their face with their eyes photoshopped into the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
And every single one of them, without fail, looked creepy.
Yep.
All of them. I don't know who at Apple developed that and thought it would look good and be a good idea, because it's a terrible idea and I hate it. But, okay.
Yeah. Fair enough. Man. Good stuff, I guess.
We'll see. We will see.
A lot of Apple stuff. But, yeah. I think that we're going to end the episode on that, because let's be real, there's a lot more news that's happening and more that's going to be this week, and that's a lot of gaming. So,
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Listener, ABK deal has not gone through, so sorry. That's all I got. Unless Landon decided he's got to have that one last thing out of nowhere.
No.
Okay.
No.
We'll end this episode. Listener, we appreciate you listening. If you want to take a look at anything online, I'm sure you've probably seen it. I mean, you've been living under a rock, or maybe some neighbor snapped your internet for a week and you finally got on, and here you are. You got your internet back, and WWDC is just crazy. If you want to take a look at our social media website, you can take a look at that at callingallplatforms.com. You can take a look at that. If you want to drop us a line, have any questions, social media platforms, our website. And you can also take a look at our videos over at Calling All Platforms Tech and Calling All Platforms Gaming on YouTube. If you want to go ahead and throw a couple bucks over there to Landon, because, he's got to put up with us all the time. Let's be real. He's the spirit of this podcast right here, right now. Or at least the back end, right?
Sure. I guess. I don't know.
I'm just giving him compliments. A little loopy at the moment. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end this episode, dear listener. Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Calling All Platforms is a production of Supporter Sound Studios. To learn more about how you can support the podcast, go to www.patreon.com/callingallplatforms.